Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today I have a spine-chilling story for you that takes place in an abandoned mansion. If you're a fan of ghost stories and haunted houses, you're in for a treat. So, grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and let's dive into the haunting of Willow Creek Manor. It was a cold, blustery night in November when our story begins. The sky was overcast, and a biting wind howled through the barren trees. I had just arrived in a small, secluded town on the outskirts of the city. My destination, Willow Creek Manor, an old, decrepit mansion that had been abandoned for decades. Local legends spoke of the mansion's dark history. It was said to be haunted by the restless spirits of its former inhabitants, a family that had mysteriously disappeared one fateful night. Intrigued by the tales and armed with my camera, I decided to explore the manor and document my findings for you all. The journey to the mansion was uneventful, but as I approached the iron gates of Willow Creek Manor, a sense of dread washed over me. The gates creaked open with a groan, as if reluctantly allowing me entry. The mansion loomed ahead, its windows dark and foreboding, and its facade covered in ivy and decay. I stepped out of my car and made my way to the front door. With each step, the air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped the grounds. I hesitated for a moment before pushing the heavy door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty halls as I entered the mansion. The interior was just as I had imagined, dusty, dilapidated, and steeped in an unsettling atmosphere. Cobwebs adorned the corners of the rooms, and the air was thick with the musty smell of neglect. I took a deep breath and began my exploration, filming everything as I went. As I wandered through the dark, labyrinthine corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every now and then I would catch a fleeting shadow out of the corner of my eye. But whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. My heart pounded in my chest, but I pressed on, determined to uncover the mansion's secrets. I reached the grand staircase, its steps covered in a thick layer of dust. As I ascended, the temperature dropped even further, and I could see my breath in the air. At the top of the stairs, a long hallway stretched out before me, lined with closed doors. The faint sound of whispers drifted through the air, sending shivers down my spine. I opened the first door on my left and stepped into what appeared to be a child's bedroom. The room was filled with old, decaying toys and a small bed covered in tattered sheets. On the wall, a faded painting depicted a happy family, a mother, father, and 2 young children. A sense of sadness and loss permeated the room, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for the family that once lived here. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I whirled around, my heart racing, but there was no one there. Panic set in as I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The whispers grew louder, almost as if they were mocking me. Just then, I heard a child's laughter, soft and eerie, coming from behind me. I turned slowly and saw the outline of a small figure standing in the corner of the room. The figure stepped forward, revealing a ghostly child with hollow eyes and a sad smile. "You shouldn't be here," the child whispered. Frozen in fear, I watched as the child slowly faded away, leaving me alone in the dark room. Gathering my courage, I finally managed to force the door open and fled the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I ran down the hallway, desperate to escape the horrors of Willow Creek Manor. As I reached the end of the hall, I stumbled upon a door that seemed different from the others. It was slightly ajar, and a faint light seeped through the crack. I pushed it open and found myself in a grand library, filled with dusty old books and a large, ornate fireplace. The flickering light came from a single candle on a table in the center of the room. I approached the table and saw an old leather-bound journal lying next to the candle. I opened it and began to read, discovering that it belonged to the mansion's original owner, a man named Edward Thornfield. The journal detailed his descent into madness as he became obsessed with the occult and performed dark rituals in an attempt to communicate with the dead. The final entry sent chills down my spine. "They are here. The spirits I summoned have taken over the house. They will not let us leave. We are trapped in this nightmare for eternity." The words seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and I could almost hear Edward's tormented voice as I read them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the library and the candle was extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, but it refused to turn on. Panic gripped me as I felt a cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there. I had to get out of there. I sprinted out of the library, down the stairs, and through the dark corridors, the whispers and laughter following me every step of the way. I burst through the front door and into the cold night air, my breath coming in ragged gasps. As I drove away from Willow Creek Manor, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the outline of the mansion, its windows glowing with an eerie light. The whispers still echoed in my mind, and I knew I would never forget the horrors I had witnessed that night. To this day, I don't know if the spirits of Willow Creek Manor are real, or if it was all just a figment of my imagination. But one thing is certain, I will never set foot in that cursed place again. This one is about an old abandoned house on Raven Hill that has been the source of countless ghost stories and urban legends. If you're into haunted houses and supernatural encounters, you're definitely going to want to stick around for this one. So, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's dive into the eerie mystery of Raven Hill House. It all started on a cool autumn evening. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and orange, and a crisp breeze rustled through the trees. My friends Sarah and Mike and I had been hearing rumors about Raven Hill House for years. They said it was haunted by the spirits of the family who once lived there, and that anyone who spent a night inside would be cursed. Naturally, we decided to check it out for ourselves. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and a healthy dose of skepticism, we set off for Raven Hill. The house stood at the top of a steep hill, surrounded by dense woods. As we made our way up the winding path, an uneasy feeling settled over us. The house came into view, its silhouette dark against the twilight sky. It was a large Gothic-style mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling and covered in ivy. We pushed open the rusted iron gate and approached the front door. The wood was warped and weathered, and the paint had long since peeled away. Mike gave the door a shove, and it creaked open, revealing a dark, musty interior. We stepped inside, our flashlights casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked ominously beneath our feet. The entrance hall was filled with old, broken furniture and cobwebs that hung like tattered curtains. Despite our bravado, we were all on edge, jumping at every little sound. We decided to split up to cover more ground, agreeing to meet back in the entrance hall in an hour. I headed towards the grand staircase, its banister elaborately carved but coated in a thick layer of dust. As I climbed the stairs, I could feel a chill in the air. Reaching the second floor, I found myself in a long hallway lined with doors. Each one seemed to beckon me, whispering secrets of the past. I chose the door at the end of the hall and pushed it open. Inside was what appeared to be a bedroom, its furnishings covered in white sheets. I pulled back one of the sheets to reveal a large ornate bed. There were old photographs on the nightstand, yellowed with age. As I examined them, I felt a presence behind me. Spinning around, I saw nothing but shadows. A sudden noise downstairs broke the silence, a loud crash that echoed through the house. My heart raced as I made my way back down, flashlight beam jittering. I found Sarah and Mike already there, faces pale and eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" Mike asked, his voice shaking. "Yeah, it came from the kitchen," Sarah replied, pointing towards a doorway at the far end of the hall. Together we moved cautiously towards the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar, and we could see that the room beyond was dark. As we stepped inside, our flashlights revealed broken dishes scattered across the floor. The air was cold, and our breaths formed visible puffs. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang. We spun around trying the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. Just then, a soft, mournful sobbing filled the air. It was a woman's voice, filled with sorrow and despair. "Who's there?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. The sobbing grew louder, and we saw a figure materialize in the corner of the room. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered, old-fashioned gown, her hair disheveled and her face pale and gaunt. Her eyes were hollow, filled with an endless sadness. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. We stood frozen, unable to comprehend what we were seeing. The woman's form flickered like a candle flame, and she began to move towards us. Instinctively, we backed away, but there was nowhere to go. Suddenly, the door flew open, and the woman vanished. We didn't waste a second. We bolted out of the kitchen and back into the entrance hall. Our breaths were ragged and our hearts pounded in our chests. We had seen enough and decided it was time to leave. As we made our way to the front door, we heard footsteps echoing behind us. We turned to see another figure at the top of the stairs. It was a man this time, dressed in old, tattered clothes, his eyes filled with anger and torment. He pointed a bony finger at us, and a cold wind rushed through the hall, extinguishing our flashlights. In the darkness, we fumbled for the door, finally bursting out into the night air. We ran down the path, not stopping until we reached the safety of our car. As we drove away, we looked back to see the house, its windows glowing with an eerie light. The whispers and cries of the spirits echoed in our minds, and we knew we had encountered something truly otherworldly. To this day, we don't talk about what happened at Raven Hill House. The memories are too chilling, too real. Some places are better left undisturbed, and Raven Hill House is one of them. If you ever find yourself in that part of town, heed our warning. Stay away from the house on the hill. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of the supernatural. Our story begins on a chilly October evening. The sun had just set, casting long shadows over the quiet suburban neighborhood. My friends, Alex and Jess, and I had heard countless rumors about the old house on Elm Street. It was said to be cursed, with a tragic past that had left the spirits of its former inhabitants restless and vengeful. Intrigued and eager for a thrill, we decided to investigate. Equipped with flashlights, a camera, and a spirit box, we made our way to Elm Street. The house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by overgrown bushes and tall, gnarled trees. Its windows were dark and empty, and the once white paint was now peeling and weathered. The atmosphere was heavy with an oppressive silence, as if the house itself was waiting for our arrival. We pushed open the rusted iron gate and walked up the cracked stone path to the front door. It creaked loudly as we opened it, revealing a dimly lit foyer covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay. We stepped inside, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The entrance hall was filled with old, broken furniture and faded portraits of stern-faced people. The floorboards creaked under our weight, and every step echoed through the empty house. Despite our initial excitement, a sense of unease settled over us as we ventured further inside. We decided to split up to cover more ground. Jess went upstairs to explore the bedrooms. Alex headed to the basement, and I stayed on the ground floor to check out the living and dining rooms. We agreed to meet back in the foyer in an hour. I started with the living room. The furniture was covered in white sheets, and a grand piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. I pulled back one of the sheets to reveal an ornate sofa, its fabric faded and torn. As I was about to move on, I heard a soft melody coming from the piano. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to see the keys moving on their own, playing a hauntingly beautiful tune. I called out to Jess and Alex, but there was no response. The music grew louder, filling the room with an ethereal presence. I backed away slowly, my flashlight beam shaking. Just as suddenly as it had started, the music stopped, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. I moved on to the dining room, my nerves on edge. The long table was set for a meal, with dusty plates and tarnished silverware laid out as if waiting for guests. A large, cracked mirror hung on the wall, reflecting the dim light of my flashlight. As I approached the table, I saw movement in the mirror out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, but there was no one there. Then, a cold draft swept through the room, and the chandelier above the table began to sway. The plates and silverware rattled, and a chilling whisper filled the air. "Get out," it said, the voice barely more than a breath. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and spun around, but there was no one behind me. I rushed back to the foyer, my heart pounding. Jess and Alex were already there, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. "Did you guys experience anything weird?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jess nodded. I heard footsteps upstairs, but when I went to check, there was no one there. And one of the bedroom doors slammed shut on its own. Alex looked shaken. "The basement? I don't even want to talk about it." I heard voices down there whispering my name. It felt like something was watching me the whole time. We decided to use the spirit box to try and communicate with whatever was haunting the house. We gathered in the living room, the air heavy with tension. Alex turned on the device and it crackled to life, scanning through radio frequencies. "Is anyone here with us?" Jess asked, her voice trembling slightly. For a moment, there was only static. Then, a faint voice came through. "Leave," it said. The word distorted but unmistakable. "Why should we leave?" I asked, my heart racing. "Curse, death, trapped," the voice replied, each word filled with a sense of urgency and despair. "Who are you?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. There was a long pause, and then the spirit box crackled again. "Margaret," the voice said. "Help. Find. Release." We exchanged uneasy glances. It seemed that the spirit of Margaret was trapped in the house, bound by some curse. Determined to uncover the truth, we continued our investigation, hoping to find a way to help her. We searched the house for any clues, finally ending up in the attic. It was filled with old, dusty trunks and forgotten belongings. In one corner, we found a small chest. Inside, we discovered a collection of letters and a diary, all belonging to Margaret. As we read through the diary, a tragic story unfolded. Margaret had lived in the house with her family in the early 1900s. Her husband, consumed by jealousy and rage, had accused her of infidelity and, in a fit of madness, had murdered her and their 2 children before taking his own life. Margaret's spirit, along with those of her children, had been trapped in the house ever since, unable to move on. Armed with this knowledge, we decided to perform a ritual to help release the spirits. We gathered in the living room, placing candles in a circle and reading aloud a passage from an old book on exorcisms that we had found in the library. As we chanted the words, the temperature in the room dropped sharply, and a fierce wind blew through the house. The candles flickered and then went out, plunging us into darkness. The spirit box crackled to life once more, and Margaret's voice came through, clearer this time. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with relief. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a sense of peace settled over the house. We knew that Margaret and her children were finally free. As we left Elm Street House that night, we couldn't help but feel a mixture of sadness and triumph. We had encountered true terror, but we had also helped to release a family from their torment. The house stood silent and still, no longer a place of fear and sorrow. Thank you for joining me on this haunting journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of the supernatural. And remember, sometimes the scariest places hide the most tragic stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.